Ladies and gentlemen, we are live for a post-race analysis edition of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast. I'd like to thank all of you guys for tuning in here, a late night edition. Usually it is the 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time after the race, but it's a little different this week because I was at the race, so we were not able to exactly get it in the next day with what I had on tap on top of driving home on Monday. But had a lot of fun. We'll break down everything that happened, not only in the Nashville race itself, but my trip, my enjoyment of the race and the festivities leading up to the race, both on and off the racetrack within the city of Nashville. And then pretty much, yeah, again, my overall thoughts on everything. We'll touch the surface, obviously, with the fantasy, what went down on my team this week, the new updated standings for the weeks to come as we get closer to the playoffs and closer to crowning a champion of our grand prize as well. Carson Boy, Kyle Larson fan, welcome to the stream, everybody. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. We do full race live streams with a realistic broadcast every day, whether it's a real race with the live commentary or a NASCAR video game. It doesn't matter. We do it all right here on the channel. We got the Nashville Superspeedway vlog coming out. It was originally supposed to be set for Thursday. It might be out tomorrow. Might be ready to go tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see on that one, but no later than Thursday. And yeah, we'll get right into this. I had a lot of fun at Nashville this weekend, both with the trip, the race itself, whether it was race day, it was not race day, whether it was at the track, whether I was not at the track, and it was awesome. And also, hang on, I need to get the chat up here. The chat freezes for some reason on my end, so I need to have the actual YouTube video chat playing in the background. There we go. All right. Now, Patrick Shadley, welcome to the stream as well. Bubba Wallace needs to get over himself. All right. I don't know. I haven't listened to any post. The only post race interview I heard was Kyle Larson's after he won, and then I was walking down the steps because I had to start driving home after that. But anyway, here we go. So we're gonna get on into this. Like always, we go chronological order, talking about the race, and then when we get done talking about the race, I'll start to share my experiences with that. So first and foremost, starting on the pole, surprisingly, was Eric Almirola. That was one thing I was shocked. It was my first ever qualifying session I had actually seen live in person, because usually I'm only there for the day of the Cup race, plus the last couple of years we haven't seen practice or qualifying in general. But I was able to see qualifying at the racetrack before the race itself. Was probably going to have a good chance to do that at Charlotte as well for the Coke 600, but unfortunately, because of that car situation I told you guys about, I was not able to get to the track until a couple hours before the race started. But anyway, I was able to see that, and who would have thought Eric Almirola would have, of all drivers, especially on an intermediate racetrack, qualified on the pole. Using the 750 package, though, I've noticed that really SHR as a whole typically runs better with the 750 package this year than the 550. The 550, they tend to struggle outside of Kevin Harvick. I mean, it's a night and day difference, honestly, if you really look at the statistics of where these guys run throughout the race and where they end up finishing, assuming they can make it to the end without a mechanical failure. But when they make it to the end of the race, they do seem to finish a lot better. And I'm talking top 15 versus 25th or worse. So it is a really big difference. But anyway, that track position really helped for Eric Almirola. He ran in the top 10 throughout most of the day. The start of this race was very similar to the playoff race at Talladega last year that I went to as well, where we had a caution on lap 1. This caution was for Quinn Houff. What was it? His right front tire had come off the race car, literally off the start, into the outside wall he went. Tough day for Starcom. He was the only driver that wrecked in qualifying as well. He didn't really total the car, but he did slide up the track. You could tell he was driving it hard into turn 1. He just overdrove the corner, pushed straight up the racetrack, and got the right rear end of the wall enough to where he had to start the rear, which granted he qualified last anyway. Because he got in the wall and didn't even finish his lap, actually pulled it onto pit road off of turn 4, not even completing his lap in qualifying. But tough break for Quinn Houff, that is for sure. Coincidentally, he does not actually finish last because Chase Elliott got disqualified. We'll talk more about that at the end. other cautions in the opening stage in the middle of green flag pit stops. Right as green flag pit stops are about to cycle through, Tyler Reddick was one of the last drivers to pit. He ended up spinning coming off of the pit lane on the access pavement. Ended up getting into the grass, ran a little bit wide, lost control of his race car. Ryan Blaney had an issue in stage one as well on that very next restart, literally just according to Racing Reference, 3 laps into the next restart. Tough break for Blaney. He had to drop at the rear despite qualifying inside the top 10. He was actually set to start 8th after qualifying 10th because Byron had to go to the rear at the start of the race as well, so it moved that outside row up. And tough break for Blaney. He had to drop to the back. I don't know exactly what happened. Why they had to fix something under the left rear. Again, sorry, I did not watch the broadcast because I was there in person, so it was kind of hard to pick up on that on the fly. Never actually ended up hearing what that was, what the issue was. So if you comment down in the chat below, let me know. But anyway, he ended up having an issue there. Ended up having to start dead last pretty much from that point on. I was scared he was going to go a couple laps down at the start of the race, kind of like we've seen instances in the past. And it's very strange that they had this issue then because there was practice the day before, and there was even qualifying a couple hours before the race. So it's just odd to me that, something was wrong with the back of the car. But anyway, his crash ended up happening later, which I believe was a completely different scenario. I guess a rotor blew out on the race car. I don't know if it was a rear rotor or a front rotor. If it was a rear rotor, that could have been the issue maybe that they were checking on the left rear at the start of the race. Again, I don't know. But Ryan Blaney had a brake failure and hard into the outside wall. Probably the hardest impact we saw throughout the course of the entire day. And we had one more caution late in the stage as well, setting up a 5-lap shootout to the end of stage 1 when Chris Buescher and the 77 car ended up getting into the wall as well. The 77 this weekend was driven by... Why am I not seeing it on here? Who drove the 77 car? Justin Haley. I was about to say Haley, but I wanted to make sure. Because he usually drives a 77 for Spire Motorsports. But anyway, so both those two simultaneously got into the wall. I don't know if they got into each other or one was checking up and as the other one went wide. Been seeing a lot of drivers go wide into turn 1 almost intentionally, and then they slide up the track too wide in turns 1 and 2 in the restart, trying to take a 3 wide. That very initial start of the race, we saw Chase Elliott do that, and he ended up sliding way up the racetrack. Yummy, Michael Turner, welcome to the stream as well. Ryan lost his brakes. Yeah, I know Ryan Blaney lost the brakes, but what was the issue? The only thing I didn't know what the issue was with Blaney was whatever happened to the left rear. Like at the very start of the race, maybe NBC didn't cover it, but I would imagine they probably would have. But Ryan Blaney dropped out of line literally as they were getting the one to go on the opening pace laps before the start of the race, pulled onto pit road. And they were underneath the left rear doing something to the racer. I don't know. I don't know if they were just pulling the fender out or something, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that was. So that wrapped up stage 1, the summary. Kurt Busch ends up getting the stage 1 victory. Originally, Chase Elliott got the stage 1 victory due to his pit strategy, but of course, with him getting disqualified at the end of the race for not having more than 3 lug nuts not secured tightly. That's an automatic disqualification. He had not 3, not 4, but 5. So very lucky he didn't lose a wheel. There was indications late in the race that he said it felt like he was about to lose a wheel. I'm sure those loose lug nuts were probably a huge... I think he said something about... there was somebody sitting above me that was giving me like message feeds because one of... I think her niece works for NBC, so she was getting like a bunch of like stuff like texted to her throughout the course of the race, like, oh, something's going on with this driver. If we didn't know what was going on, that's how I found out about Matt DiBenedetto losing a cylinder because I didn't notice he was running slow. And then when she pointed that out, I had watched DiBenedetto for a couple laps. I was like, oh yeah, he's way off the pace. You're right. And then he ended up they were under the hood on pit road during the next caution. So anyway. she was getting those updates, and he said that he felt like he had a tire coming apart, and I'm pretty sure it was a loose wheel because of all the lug nuts that were not screwed on tightly at the end of the race. So, again, because of his disqualification, Kurt Busch gets a stage win, and he does get the playoff point, which I just found out a couple hours ago. So, Kurt Busch, I believe, gets his first stage win of the season, first playoff point of the year. That's big because he does close that gap on the 16th driver in points. Had a very good points day, Kurt Busch did. Kyle Larson ends up second at the end of the stage. He was first of the drivers that ended up pitting before the end of that stage. Couldn't quite get to the front in those 5 laps. Daniel Suarez finishes third in stage 1 with the same track position strategy that Kurt Busch took. Kyle Busch ends up fourth. Austin Dillon rounds out the top 5. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 6th, and Stenhouse had a very fast race car all day long. We'll get into my predictions that I had for Stenhouse at the very beginning of the day, and I got to say I nailed it right on the head. Brad Keselowski ends up finishing in 7th. 8th was Joey Logano. Matt DiBenedetto 9th, and Denny Hamlin rounded out the top 10 in stage number 2. This is where Larson was able to jump right back out in front. He led a lot of this race, but again, did not get that stage 1 victory because of a late stage caution. There was a caution for debris near the end of the second stage, and with this caution, after the 51 had a flat tire, there was debris shedded on the racetrack. And anyway, that was one of only 2 cautions that happened in the second stage. It set up another late stage restart with just a handful of laps to go. We had 6 laps instead of 5 this time when we went green at the end of stage 2, and Larson was able to pit and get to the lead this time. There was a 2-tire stop by the top 2 on the restart, which, if I remember correctly, was Tyler Reddick and I want to say Ross Chastain, but I don't think that was right. It might have been Chris Buescher. There was 2 drivers that took right sides only, and they cycled ahead. Larson came off pit road third, but he was first on 4 tires, and he went 3 wide into turn 1, got the lead. It wasted no time, pulled away those last couple laps, so Kyle Larson gets the stage 2 victory. Austin Dillon comes up in second place. Chris Buescher comes up in third. So there we go. It was Austin Dillon and Chris Buescher that tried that track position strategy there, and it worked for him. They finished second and third. William Byron ends up fourth. He didn't run so hot in stage 1. He ended up having some damage on one of those restarts with the many cautions we had in the opening stage. I don't know, again, if they picked it up on the broadcast or not, but they were duct taping the right front, and you could see the duct tape, the silver duct tape, on the right front of the car every time he kind of passed by us, too. So it had to have affected the speed in that race car, but still a great job by Byron and that team getting the car fixed to where they need to be to at least run the top 10 all day. Again, scored a lot of stage points there in stage 2, finished in 4th. Kyle Busch, who pretty much ran top 5 most of the day, finishes 5th. Denny Hamlin 6th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. right there again 7th. Eric Almirola in 8th after no stage points in stage 1 despite starting on the pole. He started to get a little bit faster as more and more rubber was laid down on the track. The temperature started to drop as we got later into the evening. Kevin Harvick 9th, and Kurt Busch, the stage 1 winner, rounded out the top 10 in stage number 2. Again, I'll get into reading the chat a little bit when I get done with this, so don't worry. I haven't forgotten about you guys, as usual. Final stage of the race. A little bit of a sloppy start, kind of like we had at the very initial start of the race. The drivers just being extra aggressive because you never know when any restart could be the last, especially in the final stage, obviously. No more stage breaks from that point on. We saw Ryan Preece go for a spin, bringing out a caution. Bubba Wallace ended up going for a spin, bringing out a caution. And then Chase Briscoe brought out a yellow, which was eventually the last caution of the race in turn 4. He had a right front tire go down. From what it looked like to me, if the tire didn't go down, you'll have to let me know down in the chat if it was something else. But the way that I had even saw it right when it happened, that he was hooking the bottom of the racetrack, and then all of a sudden, middle of the corner, the car started to go up the racetrack. So maybe it could have been a brake failure like Ryan Blaney had, but that late into the corner, I'd like to think it was a tire. I could be wrong. It's a little harder to keep up with the race. There are certain tracks that you can pick up the broadcast, like Superspeedways are great tracks to be able to listen to the broadcast because they're all bunched in a pack. They don't get spread apart. So when they're on the back half of the racetrack, you can hear nothing but the MRN or PRN broadcast, whoever's taking care of it that race weekend. And at like shorter tracks like Nashville, just less than a mile and a half in length, or really any intermediate track or less in length, they get kind of spread apart, and you can hear them on the restarts when they're on the back stretch, but then after like 10 laps or so, you can't really listen to the MRN broadcast. And they were leading up into a run right there where I couldn't hear exactly what happened with the 14 car, but he did end up in the outside wall, and I believe his day came to an end. Tough break for Chris Buescher because he was having one of his better runs on an oval this year. We've seen him run well on the road courses, but we haven't quite seen him put together that good race from start to finish. It looked like this was going to be the race, especially with two of his teammates running in the top 10 all day and having good finishes, but unfortunately for Buescher, he could not end up finishing out the same way and ended up with his teammate Cole Custer behind the garage by the end of it. Custer did get back out onto the racetrack to at least pass his teammate Buescher, who ended up crashing late, as well as a couple of those other drivers who crashed in the final stage. But Custer did not have a good finish to his day as well, and was also running actually top 10 early there in stage 1, and then kind of faded back to around 10th to 15th. But again, SHR probably the best performance from all 4 cars combined throughout the race, despite the fact 2 of them did finish multiple laps down, if not DNF. Setting up that last restart of the race, we had a little bit of a fuel mileage race, the first ever fuel mileage race that I've seen in person. So it was a little bit of a nail biter there, especially when you're not watching the live broadcast. You're really wondering, did Larson have enough fuel to the very end of the race? And I think he saved enough middle of the run. You could hear him shutting the car off from where I was sitting, about literally right above the start-finish line. He was halfway down the front stretch with like 40 laps to go still, shutting the car off. He did that for about 10 to 20 laps, and I think from that point on, you could hear he was in the throttle a lot more. Never really lost much ground with doing that, too. It just goes to show the speed that 5 car had from start to finish, and he ended up sealing the deal. Drivers who took a little bit of pit strategy there by topping off on fuel, making sure that they weren't going to have to save any, knowing they could go to the end, were drivers like Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and I believe Daniel Suarez were 3 of the drivers, really the only 3 drivers that finished inside the top 10 that did pit under that last caution, and they were able to make it on fuel without having to save any. So when drivers that were ahead of them were trying to save, they were able to then surpass them. Not only that, but they did have about 10 to 15 lap pressure tires on the restart as well to pass some cars there as well. So great strategy call by those 3, and it ended up working out. As we take a rundown of the top 10 at the end of the race, Kyle Larson finishes P1. Ross Chastain with a great job finishing a career best 2nd place. William Byron, who mentioned that damage he had on the right side of the race car, still ended up 3rd. Eric Almirola finishes 4th because of his teammate Kevin Harvick running out of gas off turn 4 in the final lap, so Almirola picks up 4th, swapped the spot there with Harvick. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 6th best run he had this season since Dirt Bristol, or other than Dirt Bristol, when he ended up finishing 2nd. For Stenhouse, he deserved much better than that, in my opinion. He deserved to finish 2nd or 3rd. He did pit for that strategy at the very end of the race, but he was really the only one of those drivers that finished in the top 10 that was on that strategy that really had a top 5 car throughout the course of the day. Stenhouse should have, in my opinion, finished 2nd or 3rd, and the reason why he didn't is because his pit crew failed him. The only reason he even pitted during that last caution was because he already lost so much track position, not because he was losing it on the restarts. It's because he was losing it on pit road. Throughout the race, he would drop back like 2, 3, 4 spots on pit road, and he would get him back on the restarts throughout a longer green flag run. That's why we saw him running 2nd, running 3rd throughout the course of the first 2 stages, and then those late stage cautions splitting not only the strategy up, but on top of losing spots on pit road. That's why he finished 6th and 7th in both stages and not in the top 5 like he should have, or top 3 like he should have. Also at the end of the race there with those 3 consecutive cautions to start the final stage in the first like 40 laps of the final stage, he was losing spots. He was outside the top 10 by the time that last caution came out. So obviously they had to choose to pit there at that time to top off on fuel and go off strategy. And it ended up working out for him in the end with the top 10. But honestly, if Stenhouse had that track position late, he very well could have finished 2nd place in this race. Tough break for them, and I think that's just the underfundedness that JTG Doherty Racing has versus these, even Chip Ganassi Racing. Even though they're not that A-tier team, they're still a step above teams like JTG Doherty, and that really played into Stenhouse's default here. And I feel bad because Stenhouse needs every point he could get. He's still closing that gap on the 16th place driver in points because Chris Buescher did not have a great race at all. And in fact, really, there were 3 drivers below the cutoff line who had stellar races that really closed that gap on him. And now we have about a 4-horse race for that final spot with still about, I believe, 8 races to go until the playoffs, 8 or 9. And we got 2 of them this weekend at Pocono, so it'll be fun to see how that plays out at the Tricky Triangle. Other drivers inside the top 10 behind that, we mentioned Daniel Suarez was on that strategy late. Great call by Trackhouse. And that team, they finished 7th. Kurt Busch finishes 8th. He was in the top 10 most of the day. Great run for him. Chip Ganassi Racing as a whole, to have both cars inside the top 8. Great job. Christopher Bell snuck in there with the top 10. He needed a good run. He only had 2 top 10s in the last 11 races going into this race, so 9th place finish there. Great bounce back performance for Bell. And actually for Bell, when Toyota was really off, he does end up finishing first of all the Toyota drivers, believe it or not. Kyle Busch had ran better than him throughout the entire race, but for whatever reason, that last restart, they must have, or last pit stop that Kyle Busch and those guys had, they must have went the wrong way on strategy or something. That car just looked off compared to the whole race. They were about a 3rd to 5th place car, I thought. So it was odd to see Kyle Busch finish just outside the top 10 in 11th. Rounding out the top 10 was Joey Logano as well, just sneaking in there with another good finish despite not having a great race. And we've seen that a lot out of Logano this year. But, hey, at the end, he keeps getting these top 5s and top 10s even though he's running 15th most of the race. That's what really matters at the end is where you finish. As far as Kurt Busch goes as well, he did run out of fuel on the last lap of the race. He was running in 6th place, ended up losing 3 spots. But again, because of Chase Elliott's I think Elliott would have finished 7th, but because of the disqualification, obviously it dropped it back to last, so that moved Kurt Busch up an extra spot there. But Kurt Busch did run out of fuel in the final lap as well as Harvick, so they did lose a spot or 2 there for both of them. And that is going to wrap it up. Kyle Larson also led the most laps. No surprise, 264 laps led. We'll go through the predictions. My pre-race predictions. Didn't have as many of them because it wasn't a live stream edition. I did it live just outside the racetrack at a Bojangles, the nearby Bojangles to Nashville Superspeedway, a few miles out from the speedway itself. And I got to say, my predictions were spot on. I don't think I missed any of the predictions, and here is what went down. As you guys have noticed in the past, I have been really harping on Brad Keselowski and that 2 team, and I said that even though they finished 2nd in the All-Star race, it wasn't a points race, and he only got that finish with track position late because of a caution in the final 20 laps in the middle of green flag stops, and he never really lost the track position. That's why he was able to finish top 3 and compete for the win. Outside of that, he was pretty much 10th or worse most of that race. So as far as Brad Keselowski goes this week, I said, well, I think we were going to see him go back to the way he was before, not get a top 10. Not only that, just not look competitive because he didn't look very fast in practice leading up to it. I also did these predictions before qualifying, which usually I don't like doing that, but because qualifying was so close to the race, and I was at the track that day, I wasn't going to be able to actually do the predictions unless I did them live at the racetrack, but there wasn't enough cell service, and that's why the video ended up not even getting uploaded until after the race anyway. So again, sorry for that. But anyway, Brad Keselowski ends up finishing at 23rd. He ran outside the top 10 all day long. The only reason he scored stage points at the end of stage 1 was because he was one of the drivers that decided to stay out of pits to try and get some stage points. Keselowski's still barely clinging on to 10th in points. Austin Dillon is just barely behind him in points, as well as Alex Bowman. Another finish outside the top 10. This is going to drop Keselowski down to 12th in points. Keselowski's got 5 top 10s this season in the first, 17 races now? Yeah, 17. Yeah, race number 17 for points this season, and Brad Keselowski's only got 5 top 10s. He's only got 2 top 10s in the last 12 races. I said 4 or 5 weeks ago when Keselowski started this cold streak that it might not have been time to panic quite yet because it's still early enough in the season. We progress a little over a month later, and he's still not finishing inside the top 10 at all, let alone inconsistently. He's just not even finishing in the top 10 at all. that's definitely worrisome. It is definitely time to panic for that 2 team now if they're going to want to win a championship. And the way they're running this year, it only puts that case going forward that I think he is going to Roush, because I feel like if he was going to stay there, they're going to give Keselowski, just as good of equipment as Blaney and Logano on a week in and week out basis. And I just don't think Penske's really putting the energy into that 2 team because he knows Brad's not going to be there at the end of the year, in my opinion. So, again, we'll have to see what goes on with Cindric and DiBenedetto, but I really think that is the reason why we're seeing such a fall off for Brad Keselowski, not just this season as a whole, but, I mean, if he didn't win at Talladega this year, he wouldn't be that far above the cutoff line despite being 10th in point. Let me actually look that up real quick because I want to see points-wise how close he is, because I know Austin Dillon's pretty good on points, but he's only like 7 behind Keselowski. If Brad Keselowski did not win that Talladega race, we could be talking about him maybe missing the playoffs. I mean, Keselowski is 15 points ahead of Austin Dillon. Dillon's 108. So Keselowski would be 123 points above the cutoff line. I guess he'd be 2 races to the good. But if one or 2 drivers end up winning below that cutoff line, then he only drops to about 50 points above the cutoff line. 13th. He'd be 13th in the playoff standings, too, if he didn't win. So very fortunate to have that last lap pass for the win at Talladega this season, because otherwise it'd be time to panic for him missing the playoffs. But he is in the playoffs, so there is that. But I'm calling it right now, and obviously I could change my prediction before the playoffs start. Once the playoffs start, my predictions are going to be set in stone, as they usually are every year. This is only the second year we're doing predictions on the channel. But anyway, I have until then to set, who round by round is going to get knocked out. But as of right now, Brad Keselowski is around a 16 elimination. I mean, he is. I've been saying this for weeks. You guys know that if you've been watching the channel here for a while. Keselowski might not advance to the round out of the round. Yeah, exactly, Michael. I just don't. I don't have confidence in that 2 team at all. I just don't think they're really caring about that team, honestly, compared to the 12 and the 22. Are just they're like, and the 22 and the 12. I mentioned about Logano. He's struggling to run top 10 from start to finish. He's getting the top 10s at the end of the race, whether it's strategy or just, Logano is a good driver. He's a champion for a reason. He could wheel that car into a top 10 even if it's a 15th place car. And that's why he scored a 10th place finish this weekend, because he didn't look that competitive. And Ryan Blaney didn't look that great either until his I know he should have had a better finish than what he ended up having because his brake failure, but he still was, right around. He was outrunning Keselowski on speed still, which again is saying something. Blaney didn't look that fast, so I don't know. That 2 team, if Keselowski, Jeremy Bullins, and see that's the thing that I don't understand with these teams. I think you saw it out of Eric Jones last year too. I think what you saw out of Eric Jones last year is, I don't think they started the year badly. I think they started the year with just bad luck. And then about halfway through the season, Joe Gibbs gave up on him. And he knew from that point on, he was going to put Christopher Bell in the 20 car. And he was going to take Eric Jones out. So he didn't really care if Jones made the playoffs or not. Because his other 3 drivers are competing for a championship. And they have a good and reasonable shot to win it. And for Christopher Bell's sake, or Eric Jones' sake, he was probably thinking, he's not going to be here next year anyway, so why bother putting time, effort, and energy into that 20 team? And I think you're seeing the same thing with Penske and Keselowski here. I think you're seeing the same exact thing. So, unless Keselowski gets hot, which he is a championship caliber driver, I think he can do that. I just don't think Penske's given Keselowski the resources or, again, the time, effort, and energy in the shop that he's given the 22 and the 12 team right now. All right. So that was the predictions again for Brad Keselowski. I just wanted to get that out of the way a little bit. I have explained in detail why Keselowski or why I don't trust Keselowski, but I haven't really explained, maybe what could be going on behind the scenes and maybe solutions and stuff like that to it. So just wanted to throw that out there as well. My dark horse pick was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mentioned in the predictions video that he was very fast in practice. He was not only top 10 at the end of practice, but the 5 and 10 lap averages were also in the top dozen. And Stenhouse had ran at Nashville in the past as well. I know it was 10 years ago, but the drivers that did run there before in something ultimately had pretty good days. Kyle Busch is on the top 5 all day. I know he finished 11th, but he was still in the top 5 all day. Stenhouse, Harvick was past winner there. He finished top 5. The only driver who really didn't capitalize on the former glory at Nashville Superspeedway was Brad Keselowski, but I didn't have faith in him or that team going in anyway. But for Stenhouse's sake, he had ran well in the 750 tracks all year long. That's why he was in the top 16 points for the longest time up until a few weeks ago. It dropped out, but now he's starting to climb back in with that 6th place run and a lot of stage points as well. The only reason that they are probably going to miss the playoffs, if I had to pick them or the 17 team right now, is because I feel like Roush Fenway's just got a tiny bit more resources than Stenhouse's team. The pit crew as well is just a little bit better. We have more 550 tracks left still. I think we actually have more 550 tracks than 750 for the rest of the regular season. That's going to hurt Stenhouse and that team. That's where they're lacking compared to the 17 team, which we saw. I mean, we see Buescher finish in the top 10 kind of consistently on the 550 tracks, and Stenhouse is nowhere to be found in the top 15 in those races. So that's where they're lacking right now. We got 2 of them coming up this weekend. And then we'll have a couple weeks before we go back to another 550 at Atlanta. But then we got Michigan still. That's a 550. I'm probably missing a couple others that are 550 tracks for the end of the season as well that I'm not getting into off the top of my head right now. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he can do going forward as far as the playoffs go. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was my dark horse pick, and I did say he would finish in the top 10. And I didn't say he would contend for the win, which in a sense he kind of did, considering he had probably the 2nd or 3rd fastest car for the whole race pretty much, but nobody was catching Larson. So. And Kyle Larson was my pick to win the race. I stated even before qualifying, I said if he was going to qualify well, he was going to lead over half the race and win. And what he do? He qualified top 5. And what he do? He took the lead in the opening couple laps. The first green flag lap we had that went from start to finish, not counting lap 1 because we had that caution, he went 3 wide from 5th to 1st on the restart, up the middle for the lead down the backstretch. Heck of a move. Racing like it was the last lap on like lap 8 or whatever it was when they went green, and got to the lead, and he set sail, led 264 laps, won a stage, got the victory. And all of a sudden, Kyle Larson, I stated it when he had those 3 straight 2nd place finishes that he was slowly catching Hamlin in the points. Then he has 2 max points days and 3 consecutive wins later as far as points races go. And he's only 10 points behind Denny Hamlin for the regular season championship. I feel bad because Hendrick's clicking right now. There's still races for Hamlin to get around. Hamlin's very good at Pocono. He's got 5 career wins there, and we got 2 races there next weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if Denny Hamlin won at least one of those races. He won one of them last year, too. So if Hamlin's got a chance to go to victory lane for the first time this year, that's a race. Also, New Hampshire's coming up in a couple weeks, too. That's a good race for him. Hamlin's also won there a bunch. So Hamlin can still fight for the regular season championship, and he is still ahead by 10 points. But the way Hendrick Motorsports, especially that 5 team's clicking right now, it doesn't look good. And if he loses the regular season championship, he's losing out on more playoff points because that's 15 playoff points that he will not get if he does not win the regular season championship. And with no wins this season, and only 5 stage wins is still quite a bit, but when you don't have any race wins, if you only got 5 playoff points going in, that's not going to be good for Denny Hamlin. Considering that we have a lot of drivers with 1 or more wins. All right, see what you guys are saying in the chat. Top break for Elliott, disqualification. Yeah, I covered that briefly, but Chase Elliott, disqualification because of 5 lug nuts being loose on the race car. So, yeah, not ideal there by rule book. Black and white, easy call for NASCAR, 3 or more. they have to disqualify him. Those are the rules, and it's a reasonable rule too, in my opinion. I expressed in very, very full detail, so I'm not going to go in full detail here. Why I thought that it's a good rule and the right call, because it is a huge safety problem if you have 5 lug nuts missing on the race car. Yeah, so that's a big safety concern. And what, isn't Alan Gustafson suspended too? Or am I wrong on that? Or did he just get disqualified? Because if he gets suspended for next weekend, does that mean he's suspended for both races at Pocono, or does that mean he's only suspended for Saturday's race and then he can go Sunday? I don't know how that works exactly. So I guess I'll just have to read the news going up. All right, Inside Uranus, welcome to the stream. Thoughts on Nashville as a whole? I thought the race was great. Honestly, of the races, I've been to 4 Cup races this season: Talladega, Dover, Coke 600, Nashville. Talladega is still number 1, mainly because that's the best race I've seen in person ever. So earlier this year, so that's gonna be tough to beat this season in general, maybe ever, unless I see like another photo finish or something with heck of great racing all throughout. But right now, that's number 1 all time, so it's gonna be number 1 this year. But Nashville's number 2. It was a great race. I thought it was a great race. It was a little sloppy at times at the beginning. It's probably not going to stay at number 2 the rest of the year, considering I still got, I think, like 7 more races I'm going to this season. I think it could hold up for a couple weeks. I don't think either one of these 2 Pocono races are going to move above it. I could be wrong, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But I thought the race overall was great. The atmosphere was electric all weekend long. I got into town on Saturday. I left Friday after work, but I didn't get to Nashville until Saturday morning. Went to the golf course in the late morning hours. Was talking NASCAR with these 2 guys that I ended up playing along with, that I got grouped with when I got to the golf course all day. They weren't going to the race, but they had knowledge of NASCAR and stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's great for the city of Nashville. They're pumped. And they were like, yeah, a lot of people have been talking about it here for the last couple months, really. And I believe them. I believe them not only at that time, but just, leading up to the race. Because literally, I went from there to a Buffalo Wild Wings. The Buffalo Wild Wings was packed. It was like right outside my hotel, so that's why I went to Buffalo Wild Wings. But anyway, so I went in there. They were packed, and they were like, yeah, the only seats we have available are at the bar. And I don't drink, whatever. So I was, pretty quiet up there. And I heard these 2 guys talking about the Xfinity race. I was like, oh, were you guys there today? And they were like, yeah, we were there Friday night for the truck race too, and we're going there tomorrow. And they were talking about it, and they were talking about the Nashville being or Nashville having the IndyCar race and how excited they are for that. And they're just excited to have big-time racing in Nashville for the first time in a long time. And that seemed very special. You could tell the people of Nashville care about racing. They care about NASCAR. It's a market that NASCAR should have had the Cup Series in for a long time. Why they haven't raced there since 1984 in the Cup Series, I really don't know. They should have broke into this even when they were still racing the truck and the Xfinity races there. Why they even left the truck and Xfinity races, I don't know. They should have had there was a lot of hype. It was a sellout crowd. Then even at the race itself, before the race started, I ended up going by myself this weekend. And I was shocked, I was able to talk NASCAR even off the racetrack because I wasn't even at the facility on Saturday with multiple different people in multiple locations in Nashville, on the golf course, in a restaurant. And then I was able to do it at the racetrack as well with these people sitting behind me and then a couple people to my left as well. We were all just talking, oh, where are you from? Yeah, and they were all from Nashville, of course, but they were like, oh, where'd you come from? And I was telling them my story or whatever, going to, different racetracks. And when Nashville was put on the schedule last year, I wanted to be at the inaugural Cup race at Nashville. I knew it was going to be a big event, and it was. And it was awesome. It was awesome. How much country music did you listen to during the weekend? Zilch. Well, except for the pre-race concert, I listened to some, but I was actually under the grandstands for most of it at that time, so I didn't really. I think I only got back out there literally for the last song they played before the driver intros and stuff. So I didn't really it didn't really outside of that one song, and I don't even think I listened to the whole thing. I think it was like I was getting to my seats, and by the time I sat down, the song was like most of the way over. So outside of that, no, I didn't. I'm not a country music fan, so I wasn't sure how that atmosphere exactly was going to work with me because I listen to a lot of metal. I'm a metalhead, but or like classic rock even. But so like that didn't really like country is just not my thing. But it was still a very much enjoyable time. Honestly, as far as like cities I've been to, Charlotte, it honestly I had that same feel as Charlotte, where Charlotte you could feel the nostalgia of NASCAR, but more people were talking about NASCAR at Nashville than what they were at Charlotte, random people at least. And they were very more welcoming, I feel like, than what Charlotte was, because Charlotte, I didn't have that same kind of like atmosphere. The only other track I've had the atmosphere where I was able to actually talk with a huge group of people around me was at Atlanta back in 2019, but I also had somebody with me at the time too, so it wasn't like I was, sitting there and, but yeah, I mean, they pretty much. The only reason I started talking to them to begin with was because they asked me what the cone rule was. It was an older couple that was sitting above me, and they asked what the orange cone was because they were there all weekend. They were wondering why cars were slowing down, so I told them what the choose cone rule was, and they were like, "Oh, we actually met somebody that knows what that rule is," and like they're like, "Awesome," and they're like, "Oh, you know your stuff or whatever," and I was like, "Yeah, I watch it every week and." Been a diehard fan since I could remember. And anyway, again, the energy was great. Got to talk another. I didn't even mention this on the podcast yet. I've ran into Danny B. From Danny B Talks. Daniel Baldwin. Ran into him. I was talking to them, to the people above me, and this was like maybe only 20 minutes before the race started. I can't remember if it was before or after driver. I think it was just before driver intros because they just did them at their car, so it was right before they did the national anthem and stuff. And I knew it was getting close to race time, whatever. And I had kind of like glanced out for him when I was vlogging myself throughout the course of the day. And I was there from like 8 o'clock in the morning to the end of the day. I wasn't there Friday, Saturday, but I was there all day Sunday. And I just didn't see him. I thought it was kind of odd. I was like, oh man, I haven't, seen any of these guys yet. And I know there's a lot of them here. I was like, oh, well, I guess, wait again, whatever. It's no big deal. I'll probably see him at another race. And I was in my seats and I was talking to him, and I saw Danny B's wife, Claudia. I saw Claudia like kind of like I was looking at the person I was talking to, but I could kind of like see her behind them, like literally only 5 rows up, 6 rows up. And I did like a double take. I'm like, that kind of looks like Claudia. And I didn't see Danny sitting there. And I kind of like, moved over a tad after I got done talking with the group ahead of me. And then I saw Danny talking to her. I was like, oh, it's Danny B. So I did like immediately I just kind of went up there. And then when I was walking up there, and I told this story last night, but I think it's kind of a funny story. So I was walking up there and I was just going to say hey and whatever. And wasn't going to like, say anything about myself. I was just going to say, hey, man, I appreciate what you do. For NASCAR, I've been a fan for a few years, and great to finally meet you or one of the, other NASCAR YouTubers at a racetrack because I go to a lot of races, and I've been to races you guys have been at, and I just never saw you. And so on my way up there, I get like within a couple feet of him, and then he actually reaches out to me first before I even get a word into him, and he's like, well, I was like in the middle of about to say, hey, Danny B, how's it going? But he was like, oh, hey. He's just like, we saw you coming up the steps, and we thought you were Jarrett for a second. Jarrett Lundberg, the Iceberg, on YouTube as well, for those of you that don't know. And he was like, I was talking to Claudia. I was like, I thought that was Jarrett for a second. And they were talking about how I looked like him. And so he was like, you mind if I actually take a picture with you so I could send to him? So, and because they thought I looked like him and stuff. And then he posted it on Twitter and stuff too. He asked me if it was all right. I was like, yeah, it was okay. So I wasn't going to go up there and like take a picture with him or anything. I was just going to, talk for a couple minutes like we ended up doing. So I thought it was just kind of odd that like it was like a complete 180 where it was like, oh, he recognized me, as I recognized him, thought I was somebody else, then wanted to take a picture with me instead of like a fan wanting to take it. I thought that was like, kind of like odd, but at the same time it was pretty cool. And then we were just talking about like Nashville, how excited he was for the races. Basically, he was just as excited if not more excited than anybody else that I had talked to throughout the course of the weekend at the track, even so. But that was kind of a cool story. Very down to earth guy. If you see me or any other of the NASCAR YouTubers in person, just go up, say hi. There's a good chance we're going to talk to you for a couple minutes because I wasn't, especially that close to the race. I didn't want to waste their time at all. I just wanted to say hi. Not ask any questions. So I mean, I asked him about the only thing I think I asked him was, "I'm surprised you aren't in the suites," because I knew you were working with Nashville. That was kind of the first thing I noticed. So that's why I kind of also thought why I didn't see them, because I figured they were sitting luxury style or something. He's like, "No, this is the best way to watch a race." I was like, "Exactly. That's why I've always watched races from the stands. I never watched races from the infield." I'd like to go in the infield one of these times, but I wouldn't want to watch a race from down there just because I want to get the feel, the atmosphere of the crowd and everything. Did he give Danny B your autograph? No, I did not get. I didn't even tell him I had a YouTube channel. I didn't want to do that. I did tell him who I was because I had commented. I do send super chats out from time to time during the NASCAR Weekly podcast, and I think he did recognize me, but obviously not actually see me before he couldn't draw a face, and he probably still was in shock that I wasn't Jarrett at the time too. So I don't know, but anyway, yeah, I didn't tell him anything about that. I didn't want to tell him anything about the even walking up there. I was like, should I tell him about? And Slap Shoes was sitting down on the other end too. I was in the middle of talking to Danny, and I was gonna get Slap Shoes included too. Hey, how's it going? Because I saw him. And he was going down to get a beer right as I was walking up the steps, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him at all. But yeah, I was able to talk to Danny B. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But I just find that and I hope I get a chance to talk to them again. Sometime, whether it's in person or they find out about my channel, because I'm not gonna be the one to go out there and hey, I have a YouTube channel too. No, I'm not gonna do that. If they find out about me accordingly, then we're gonna have that story of the first time that we met each other and he thought I was Jarrett. And that's just gonna be a kind of a funny story I guess we'll have forever. So that's a pretty unique experience for sure for being the first I guess meetup, you would say. But yeah, want to share that story with you guys too, because I thought that was pretty funny. I didn't have it on the vlog because I wasn't, going up there with my camera either. I wasn't even going up there to get a picture. I was just going up there to say, hey, how's it going? Just wanted to tell you I support you guys and whatever. Get all that mini spiel out of the way. All right. The only other thing we got to talk about is power rankings, I believe. Also fantasy. I know I'm taking a while here. Don't worry. We do have NASCAR 05 Truck Series still coming up here tonight. For those of you wondering. We just might run till closer to 10:30 for that race to come to an end at least. All right, so as far as fantasy goes for this week, I had Kyle Larson. Of course, he was my race win pick. Third win prediction I've had right in the last 4 races now. All 3, I had Kyle Larson winning. But hey, you know what? When you start 0 for 14 or whatever, it was 0 for 13. It was 0 for 13 to start the year. So 0 for 13 to start the season, and I had 9 right last year. That's a quarter of the season. I was thinking, man, I'm probably not going to be able to get to 9. But I stuck with my gut these last 3 weeks on top of the education that I've had, that I do all the stat reports and everything else before the race. So I have my full predictions in play for, who could be a possible sleeper pick. The must-have and the don't-haves. They have to have track success, and they have to look fast if there's practice and qualifying that weekend, which there isn't a lot of, with NASCAR now. Hopefully by next year I'll be able to get, nearly half the predictions. I know that's, kind of hard to do, but it's a lot easier to predict stuff when you see practice and qualifying, because even if they have good track success, they don't look good that weekend. I can pretty much kind of tell, okay, what kind of weekend they're going to have typically. So it was a little easier with that this weekend, I will say, and that's probably why I didn't miss any of the predictions with the don't-haves. All the sleeper picks were right on, and of course I predicted the winner, and the must-haves are right on. But anyway, I had all 400 guys in the lineup. I had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Ryan Blaney. Of course, Chase Elliott getting the disqualification. That dropped me to second behind Andrew Hollenbach for this weekend by 4 points. If I would have had him, I would have been coming after you guys for the lead this week. I mean, that would have been about 40-plus points I would have had. But my fantasy team pulled a Chase Elliott. Oh, jeez. I did have Ryan Blaney in my lineup, too. Stenhouse was my sleeper. I had him in the garage to start. Blaney went out. I couldn't get connection for the longest time like I did at the start, why the original video never uploaded for the predictions. But show your mullet and we'll decide if you look like... No, I will tell you... and that was probably the thing, too. He probably saw the back of me, and, like, between the hair and the beard... I don't really think, like, our faces look the same, but maybe to somebody like Danny who hasn't seen me before, they would probably do. But anyway, yeah. No, you guys don't want to... I've been wearing a hat all day, trust me. Don't. I'm sure Jared could get away with it. He's definitely... I will not be ashamed to say that I have less hair on the top of my head than what he has. So, I'll throw that much out there. You guys have seen my head. I do have hair on the top of my head. I'm just saying I've got a bigger forehead. That's all. That's all. But I want to see myself with a Winston Cup hat on. If I wear like Jared's Winston Cup hat next time I see, or we alternate hats, I want to see like if there's a difference there. But anyway, yeah. So when Blaney had that brake failure, I was trying to get him out of the lineup, and it took till like late stage 2 by the time I finally was able to get him in there. I was finally able to connect to the internet enough, so that helped me out a ton. Because Stenhouse had a great day. So I had all Chevys in my lineup, and even Bowman, who didn't run great. And I did state, too, that I figured all 400 guys were going to run top 10, but if there was one driver to not do it, it was going to be Bowman, even though Bowman's 2 wins came on 750 tracks and actually came on the last concrete track at Dover, was his last win as well. I did say that he didn't look as fast in practice as those other guys did, and I didn't have as much faith in Bowman for that reason. But so I was right on that, outside of the fact Chase Elliott ended up getting disqualified. So, but Elliott had a top 5 car all day until that wheels started coming apart on him late because he didn't have the lug nuts tight, and then obviously again got disqualified for it. So that was my fantasy team. Mentioned again, Andrew Hollenbach won last week, and the overall standings in the wrong league. Oh, wait. KRC League. Overall, there we go. Super B-Man 1, Tim Irvin still leads the way. Inside Uranus is up to second. There you go. P-Chat Motorsports back to third, season low. Remember, he led about the first 15 weeks of the year, but he is still very much in contention as he is about, do the math correctly, 96 points off the lead, and Inside Uranus is 93 points off the lead in second, so that is the top 3 right now. Then Hollenbach, it's a heck of a battle for second place right now. We're all within 104 points of the lead, but second through fifth is all within 11 points of each other. So it is a tight battle right there. And again, 208 points were scored for the winner for this week. Anything could happen. Ethan, are you still in contention? Yes, you are. Let's see here. You're about 400 back. You can't make that up in 1 week, but you are still in contention because there are still 8 races left. So, I mean, you could literally, you could say win 4 of the last 8 weeks, and you'd be right. You'd be right there. So, you're probably the long shot of the people that still have a chance to win this. Top 7, you're in 7th right now. I'd say still have a chance to win the regular season. Again, it resets for the playoffs still. So, even if you're not doing well right now, it resets for the playoffs, so you have a second chance to win. But right now, again, if I win, I don't have to. And for those of you wondering, too, or might think like, oh, that's bull crap that if you win, then none of us get the prize. Guys, I'm putting my money on the line here. So I feel like I should have a say in that if I win the overall standings, that I shouldn't have to spend my money. Also, too, I'm not monetized yet. So, it's not like I'm taking the YouTube money and giving it back to you guys, partially. I literally taking it out of my back pocket because I'm not getting paid by YouTube right now. So, because I'm not monetized yet. So, So bear with me with that. That could change when I become monetized, but for this season, it's not. It's gonna have to work out that way. I'm sorry, but and that's why I'm giving you guys 2 chances to win as well. Say I win the playoffs or win the regular season titles, there will still be at least another champion. So I could win them both. I'm gonna try to win them both. Trust me, it's not gonna be easy, but we'll see. Power rankings, we're going to go through this kind of quick so we can get this live stream underway. Again, I had to work today, so that's why this live stream was a little bit later, as you guys saw. And then also, what else we got here? Yeah, just power rankings. And then NASCAR 05 coming up as soon as we wrap the power rankings up. We usually do these streams for an hour anyway, and we're closing in on an hour right now. We're just at 56 minutes, so yeah, we can get this done here. I will say the top 10 has not changed. Remember, we did not do power rankings last week because it wasn't a points race. But I did factor some of the All-Star stats in. If a driver was still struggling but ran well in the All-Star race, I didn't count it. Like Brad Keselowski, for instance, he's still outside the top 10. Even with the top 10, I don't think Keselowski would have been in this list still. But considering the runs prior to the top 10. And so, yeah, points races, we already mentioned Brad Keselowski. Not on the top 10 list still because he has 2 top 10s in the last 12 races. Don't worry, Keegan, you won't win both. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Michael McDowell, he's got 5 top 5s. Kurt Busch starting to pick up the pace a little bit. Kurt Busch is actually only 24 points below the cutoff line. 2 races ago, he was 80 points below the cutoff line. So in 2 races, he gained 54 points on Chris Buescher with 2 great runs. Look at, man, I feel bad for Chris Buescher because you kind of want to pull for him to make the playoffs because of all the teams that are in the playoffs right now. A Roush Fenway car being in there, he's basically kind of doing what Newman did a couple of years ago. But the fact that Chris Buescher is a lot less experienced and younger, you're really wanting to pull for him in this, underfunded team compared to both the Ganassi cars, let's say, or even Matt Benedetto for that instance as far as equipment goes. So, and he's beating all 3 of those guys right now. But I don't know. Because Chastain's picking up too. He's 50 points below the cutoff line now. Which, again, Kurt Busch gained 54 points in 2 weeks. So, 50 points, you could still gain in 1 race, possibly. And Chastain's had 3 top 10s in the last 5 races. So, he's getting up there. 2 top 5s in that stretch as well. Matt Benedetto is only 46 points back now. He has gained a little bit on Buescher, but not as rapidly. Say Kurt Busch on Stenhouse gained a lot of points yesterday. He gained 37 points on Chris Buescher yesterday alone. 2 days ago on Sunday alone. So he's only 43 back now. So it is getting tight right there. And then Christopher Bell, he had only 2 top 10 finishes in the last 11 races, much like Keselowski, but he did get a top 10 this weekend. I couldn't move him above anybody, though. That it was only 1 race, and nobody really, even though Blaney didn't finish, and Blaney, by the way, is number 10 on my power rankings list. So, yeah, Blaney hasn't been that great, and I excluded the All-Star race with Blaney, too. So, again, I don't value the All-Star race much. So, not including the All-Star race, the points races, Blaney's only got 1 top 10 in the last 5 races now. That's concerning. Penske's struggling. Not as bad as Keselowski, as a whole. But we saw the 22 the last couple of weeks not have the speed, but he's getting the finishes. Blaney's right there with Logano on speed, but Blaney's not getting the finishes Logano is. And that's the experience in the champion in Logano versus Blaney as well, for sure. But Blaney's number 10. Statistically and recent success is why I have Blaney at 10. Blaney's got more top 10s than anybody else that isn't on the list. And he's got a win compared to, guys like Reddick, Dillon. They don't have wins, even though they've been performing better than Blaney lately. Just that security of being in the playoffs for sure. Especially Reddick being 49 points above the cutoff line. By no means is Reddick a lock for the playoffs, but so, see if you guys agree down in the chat. Blaney being at number 10 for the 2nd straight week. How about Michael McDowell still at the top? I know. And I can't put him in the top 10 for that because I don't think he's, top 10 for the championship because this is how my power rankings work. These are my championship predictions. But he's very much inside the top 13. I'd put him 13th on the power rankings. I'd put him above Brad Keselowski. I mean, heck, he's got just as many top 10s as Keselowski this season. More in reason. I mean, I know I'm poking. It might seem like I'm poking fun at Keselowski, but McDowell's having a good season. Let's see. Even McDowell finished 12th in the All-Star race, too. But again, I won't factor that in. All right, so since Talladega, Michael McDowell has 5 finishes of 16th or better. 2 top 10s in that stretch. Which is just as much as Keselowski in that stretch for top 10s as well. So they both have 2 top 10s since Talladega. Michael McDowell's got 5 finishes of 16th or better. Brad Keselowski since Talladega, which again would be 7 races. 8 races if you count Dega. So 8 races, 2 top 10s, and 5 top 16s for McDowell. Gotta find Keselowski. And then Brad Keselowski stats since Dega in the last 8 races, also 2 top 10s. And see here. And also 5 finishes of 16th or better. So, I mean, they're like dead equal on statistics here recently. But again, this is a front row Ford versus a Penske Ford. That's why I'm concerned about Keselowski. Is that Michael McDowell's literally keeping up the same pace that Keselowski's keeping up right now. All right, that's enough. I won't talk any down on Brad Keselowski the rest of the night, I promise. I'm a Penske guy. I'm just stating the obvious, that's all. Kevin Harvick comes in at number 9 on the list. Alex Bowman at number 8. Again, 8 through 10 did not change at all for me from 2 weeks ago, the last points race. Bowman, I know he's got 2 wins this season, but again, another finish outside the top 10 yesterday. He's just not quite finishing as well. Harvick's got actually 4 more top 10s than Bowman, but Bowman's got 2 wins versus Harvick 0. And even though Blaney's got 1 win and Harvick doesn't have any, Harvick's ahead of Blaney because Harvick's got 5 more top 10s than Blaney does. So I think that's fair to put Harvick ahead of Blaney. And again, I'm a Ryan Blaney fan, but I do these unbiased. I legitimately go on. Now, my race win picks, I will say I have had Blaney, pull my heartstrings a little too much before the start of the race, and I change my pick to Blaney sometimes. And I come close every time I do that. He comes so close to winning. Like Martinsville this year, he won both stages. He led over half the race, but he didn't win because of the pit road error. And then Kansas, too, I think. Well, no, I didn't have him winning. There's another race I had him winning. Oh, it was last season. Last season at Las Vegas and Auto Club. I had him winning both races because I thought that team had a lot of speed. Vegas, he had the race won. Caution comes out with 2 to go. And then Todd Gordon brings him onto pit road, and they finish like 11th or something. And then the next week, he was running second. Wasn't going to win, but he was running second. Then he had a tire going down with like 2 laps left. So what happens is when I pick Blaney to win, he runs well, and then with literally a couple laps to go, something catastrophic happens that's out of his control, and he ends up finishing outside the top 10. So just note that for whenever I end up picking Ryan Blaney to win another race, just know that that's probably going to end up happening again because those seem to be the trends. Anyway, I don't know what I was talking about before that. But anyway, power rankings, back to the power rankings. Number 7 is a driver who I think most people would probably have him in their championship 4, honestly. I think a majority of the NASCAR fans would say this driver would actually be in the championship 4. But for me, he has not been great since his last victory, and that would be Martin Truex Jr. Yes, I have Martin Truex Jr. with 3 wins this year, second most in the win total. But I have him at 7 on my power rankings as far as the championship. Now, yes, he is going to have playoff points. And the one thing I will say, too, is that you look at the round of 8 races, and Martinsville's that last race before the championship 4. He could very well win that race again. He is the king at Martinsville, currently at least, of everybody that's currently in the Cup Series. So he can very well win that race and make it to the championship 4 and bolster their way in. But the reason why I have him 7th is compared to recent runs. We'll take a quick look. Oh, why did I exit out of the... I always exit out of... It's like I get done talking about a certain driver, and for whatever reason, I exit out of the season statistics, and I have to log back into NASCAR's website. Get it going again. Okay, so Martin Truex Jr., he has not been great in recent races. Outside of Sonoma, where he finished 3rd, these are his races, and I will include the All-Star race because he did not run well there either. 22nd at Nashville. Yeah, he was just slow the whole race. I don't know what was wrong with that 20. Toyota was slow outside of Kyle Busch, to be honest. And then Bell picked it up there at the very end with that track position, or that pit strategy that got him up into the top 10. But 22nd at Nashville. 13th in the All-Star race. 3rd at Sonoma. 29th at Charlotte. 35th at Coda. 19th at Dover. That's the last 6 races for Truex. 13th or worse in 5 of the last 6 races. 3 finishes of 22nd or worse. 4 of 19th or worse. That's why I have Truex at number 7. He is not performing like he did at the very beginning of the year when he won 3 races. And even though he has 3 wins, he's only got 8 top 10s this season. Only has 8 top 10s. Which is still more than a lot of drivers. Same amount as Chase Elliott. But it's less than Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick. Or sorry, no, Elliott's got 10. Sorry, I was looking at the top 5s. So Truex has less top 10s than Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. So he's 8th in top 10s this season. So again, and a lot of those were at the very beginning of the year when he was hot and he was winning races. So Truex is definitely falling off. He's not Brad Keselowski falling off, but I think Denny Hamlin will hold off Hendrick and win the regular season championship. I did state that earlier on in the podcast that as of right now, I'd have to say no. The way Larson's running, because Larson's only 10 points behind him now. If he still had a good cushion, I'd say so, but I don't think anything's stopping Larson anytime soon. We don't go to another Superspeedway for another 8 races yet. So, and by then, yeah, Denny Hamlin could. I mean, you never know, though, too. Denny Hamlin's awesome on Superspeedways. Kyle Larson, not so much. And that's the one Achilles heel that Larson will probably have even this season is Superspeedways. So Larson could have a 50-point lead going into Daytona in the regular season finale. Larson has a bad run. And Denny Hamlin goes on to score a lot of stage points and win the race, and Hamlin can still get the regular season championship. Like, that's actually feasible. Looking at the statistics, one versus the other at Daytona and at Superspeedways in general, I could honestly see that. So Larson will have to literally clinch the regular season championship before Daytona if he's, in my opinion, a lock for the championship. So it could definitely come down to the last race as far as the regular season championship. But yeah, as of right now, I got Larson. Way too hot right now. And Denny Hamlin's kind of falling off a little bit. And I'll talk more about that in a quick sec as well. We'll go through the rest of the running order here in the power rankings. I got Joey Logano 6th, Kyle Busch 5th. I had Truex in my championship 4 last week, and he dropped all from 4th to 7th. So Logano, Busch, and Elliott all move above him. Busch, Logano, again, Busch 5th. Kyle Busch, that is. Joey Logano 6th. And those guys have been pretty much back and forth. Kyle Busch and Logano on a week-to-week basis. It's just whoever seems to run better. And Kyle Busch has been a lot more consistent than Logano. Their finishes have been similar to each other. Like season statistics, finishes, they have been almost identical between Kyle Busch and Logano. Reason why I have Kyle Busch ahead is because he scores more stage points. He's actually running up front the whole race. Logano, they unload, they have no speed. And then by the end of the race, he can get a top 10. Which is kind of what we saw out of Kyle Busch last season. Remember, Logano's only got 1 win this year, guys. I know Kyle Busch has 1 win, but he's competed for a lot more wins. Logano did compete for a lot of wins early in the year, and kind of like Truex, the last, like, I don't know, 5-6 weeks for whatever reason, he's just not showing any speed at all. My championship 4, in this order, Denny Hamlin is number 4. Chase Elliott is up to number 3. William Byron, number 2. And Kyle Larson is my championship favorite right now after Nashville this last weekend. Denny Hamlin drops all the way to 4. I know he's leading the regular season point standings, but Larson's only 10 points behind him. Hamlin doesn't have a win. He doesn't have 5 stage wins. He loses the regular season championship. He's losing 15 playoff points. He would still get 9 if he finishes second, but Byron and Elliott are closing in on Hamlin too. I know Byron's still about, 80? I just saw it. 82 points back, 81. And Elliott's 94. But considering how strong Hendrick is and how quickly Larson closed that gap, 2 or 3 races, Byron and Elliott are right there if Hamlin continues to... And Hamlin's getting good runs. He's still finishing top 10. But when you have these guys running top 5 the whole race, they're scoring more stage points and more race points. They're chipping away 10 to 20 points a race on Hamlin. Because they were about 120 back a couple races ago. Byron and Elliott were at least, and now they're 81 and 94 back. So again, they're just like slowly chunking, even though Hamlin's still getting good finishes. And that's why Hamlin's still in the championship 4 without any wins, is because he is still getting good finishes. 12 top 10s, 9 top 5s on the year. Still got the second most top 5s, and he is tied for the second most top 10s with Larson and Harvick. Chase Elliott's at number 3. Elliott was number 2 last week. And then Hamlin was 3. Byron was 4. I moved William Byron above Chase Elliott, that 9 crew. With the inspection failure, finished last. So I had to move Byron ahead because Byron has been more consistent than Elliott this year. Byron has been more consistent than anybody this year, even Kyle Larson. And that's why I really trust that 24 team, is because they have been awesome. I saw a stat earlier today with Byron. Don't quote me exactly, but I think he's got the best average finish this season. Even than Larson, just because of how consistent he's been. 3rd at Nashville yesterday for Byron. 7th in the All-Star race. 35th at Sonoma. You got in that crash. That's not good. But 4th at Charlotte. 11th at Coda. Just barely missed out on the top 10 there. And he had a damaged race car, too, and was still rallying. Incredible performance to get that 11th place run. 4th at Dover, 4th at Darlington, 9th at Kansas, 2nd at Talladega, 7th at Richmond, 4th at Martinsville, Bristol Dirt, he finished 6th, 8th at Atlanta, 8th at Phoenix, 8th at Vegas, win at Homestead. He has won, including the All-Star race, in the last 16 races. He has finished worse than 11th once. Willie B is on fire. Kyle Larson's getting the race wins. Byron's just getting the consistent finishes. And I know consistency might not do as well in today's point system. It'll get you to the championship 4. If he puts up finishes like that in the round of 16, round of 12, round of 8, he's making it to the playoffs. I guarantee it. I guarantee he's going to make it to the championship 4. Even if he only has the 1 win this season, like he has had, he will make it. He will be that 4th driver making it to the championship 4 this year, and that's why I trust him right now. That's why he's in my championship 4. How could he not put him up there? 1 finish guys, that's astronomical. In the last 15 races, he's got 1 finish worse than 11th. And only 2 finishes worse than 9th, which would be that 11th at Coda, then the DNF at Sonoma. And he's a pretty good road course racer, so it's actually kind of surprising that the 2 road courses are the races he didn't finish in the top 10. Because I think he had 3 straight finishes in the top, 5 on road courses before that, too, so... But again, he had damage there. You should put Anthony Alfredo in your Pocono line. Inside Rain has been very, very high up on Anthony Alfredo's radar. But yeah, and then Kyle Larson, #1 for obvious reasons. Larson's been #1 the last couple weeks on the channel. He won the. We didn't even do power rankings after the All-Star race, but he won the All-Star race, and then he won last week. Not going to move him down. He's got 4 wins in a row, 7 straight top 2s if you count the All-Star race. Get out of here. And by the way, Byron does have the most top 10s this season, too, of any driver. Still. 13. 13 top 10s and 17 points races. Crazy. And he's got 7 top 5s, which is tied for 4th most. Only drivers that got more top 5s than him are Hamlin, Larson, and Elliott. And that's the championship 4 right there. That is the championship 4. He's tied with Joey Logano, by the way, but he's got 3 more top 10s than Logano, and he's 2 spots ahead of him in points. So will he be getting the nod? All right, that's going to wrap it up for this. Man, I went really long into this. I'm sorry. We will get NASCAR 05 underway here in a couple minutes. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. Hopefully you had a lot of fun here tonight listening, watching, whatever you were doing. Shout me out anywhere. I don't care if it's at your friend's house, your family's house. You know somebody that watches NASCAR. Tell them to watch this channel. Watch this kid. He knows his stuff. All right? And say, this guy right here is going to be a broadcaster in NASCAR someday. You don't want to miss the stuff he's doing on YouTube right now. Because we do that live commentary every day. One quick thing. Shout out to my Detroit Pistons. I just got the update. #1 pick, baby. #1 pick in the NBA draft. We're still probably going to suck the next few years, and we'll probably end up trading this #1 pick away. I can see that happening. The front office is not good with the Pistons. I ran about them at Pistons games all the time about how bad the front office is. It's the worst front office in Detroit. You think the Lions front office is bad. The Pistons front office has been bad for decades. They've been bad since like the mid-2000s. I don't know how they won a championship. They won a championship just because they had a good like collective group. That team would not have won a championship in the last decade with like all these all-star teams. There's no way. There's no way they'd be able to beat like half of these teams now. So they're lucky. But anyway, that's enough of that. Like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you guys very shortly for NASCAR 05. And more predictions this weekend at Pocono, live from the racetrack. We will be live streaming from the hotel both Saturday and Sunday, pre-race and post-race, both days. It'll be a lot of fun. Live from Pocono again this weekend. Thanks, everybody. Catch you next time.